If that easement still held, the HOA didn't own exclusive control of the area they'd been siting under. Ownership meant authority. Authority meant jurisdiction over fines. Lose jurisdiction, lose leverage. The county recorder's office opened at 8 a.m. I was there at 7:55 with a thermos of black coffee and a flash drive. The clerk, Denise, wore reading glasses on a chain. She searched the microfilm, then grinned. Still active, never extinguished. Utility rights revert to adjacent property, if unused for 30 consecutive years. Last recorded maintenance, June 1998. That's 26 years. You, Mr. Mercer, are the adjacent property. Knowledge nugget number 1. Under Texas Property Code 75/001, a recorded easement that has not been used for 30 consecutive years may terminate, reverting rights to the adjacent owner if properly asserted. Meaning, I could reclaim control of the access road the HOA built its private park over, and the road leading straight to Karen's favorite gazebo. I didn't say a word to anyone. I just requested certified copies. That evening, another letter was waiting. Special board meeting, Thursday, 6 p.m. Topic, disciplinary action re. Lot 12. That was me. I felt the old fear of losing June's place rise up again, the thought of men in suits auctioning it over paperwork. But this time, the math was on my side. The night before the meeting, I locked the certified deed in a red binder, labeled Utility Reversion, Private. Sam watched me. You gonna drop that bomb tomorrow? Not yet, I said. Let them talk first. He smiled, slow and wheezy. That's June's patience you're channeling. Maybe it was. When Thursday came, I parked across from the clubhouse. The building lights glowed behind tinted glass. Through them, I saw silhouettes, the board lined up like jurors. I straightened my tie, breathed in the diesel from a nearby pickup, and stepped in. Idanta. Karen looked up, fake pleasant. Mr. Mercer, we've received numerous reports of non-compliance, environmental disturbance, debris, and improper cooperation with law enforcement. Please respond. I laid my notebook on the table. Every photo, every notice, every timestamp. Her expression twitched as she saw how thick it was. I spoke calmly. You've cited under clauses that exempt emergencies. You've entered private land. You've ignored written notice. I'm requesting dismissal of all actions and reimbursement of any recording costs within 10 days. Doug crossed his arms. You think you can threaten us? No. I can prove you breached your own charter. Karen leaned forward, voice low. You don't understand how associations work, Mr. Mercer. We own this environment. I almost laughed. You might want to verify that before you say it on record. The room went still. I caught the sound of a ceiling fan ticking. One blade chipped. The board attorney cleared his throat. We'll take your remarks under advisement. Good, I said, collecting my binder. And I'll take your recording request under Texas's one-party consent law. Have a nice evening. Outside, the wind had shifted north, cool and dry. The plane wreck was gone now, but scorch marks still blackened the soil. I looked out over them and whispered, 17 days. That's how long I figured it would take before their own arrogance hit the county records like a freight train. By sunrise the next morning, my phone buzzed with a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. Karen's voice, clipped as ever. Mr. Mercer, your presence at last night's meeting is recorded as hostile. The board will proceed accordingly. The tone had that brittle edge people use when they know they're losing control. I saved the audio to my log. 3 days later, a new envelope arrived. Not from the HOA, but from Prairie Hollow Legal Coos. Ensel, embossed and heavier stock. Inside, notice of intent to file lien, $2,050 plus administrative fees. I laughed, the dry kind that catches in your throat. They were doubling down on a bluff without checking the cards. Sam dropped by carrying 2 coffees. You get the love letter? Yeah, I said. I'm about to send one back. I drafted a 3-page response titled Formal Dispute of Unauthorized Enforcement, citing that dormant easement and Section 12B. I printed 2 copies, one for their attorney, one for the county compliance office. In the margin, I wrote a simple line, all further correspondence will be documented and forwarded to my counsel. That night I opened my old external drive labeled FAA Projects. I hadn't touched it since retirement. It held site maps, runoff models, even soil permeability studies. Everything tied to parcels now under HOA control. If Karen was so eager to weaponize bylaws, I'd counter with data, public and lawful. The HOA started tightening screws. The next week I got a wellness check at 10:30 p.m. 2 patrol cars at my gate, lights bouncing off the barn. The deputy said someone from the HOA claimed I was making threats on community media. I showed him my phone, no such posts. He apologized, shook my hand. I logged the visit, 2241. 2 officers, no citation. That was when I realized the pattern. Karen wasn't protecting the HOA, she was protecting herself. Rumor had it she'd signed a private landscaping contract with her cousin's company. $18,400 billed as beautification. No board vote recorded. If true, that was a breach of fiduciary duty. I asked Sam if he still knew anyone in county procurement. He grinned. Retired, not dead. 2 calls later, we had the vendor registry. The Cousins LLC was listed as a preferred vendor, but not bonded for HOA work. Knowledge nugget number 2. Under most state statutes, HOA officers must disclose and recuse from any contract involving relatives or personal financial interest. Failure to do so can void the contract and trigger restitution or removal. We now had motive for Karen's aggression, deflection. Early the next morning, I met with Alicia Trent, my attorney. Mid-40s, sharp bob haircut, known in Amarillo for suing 2 HOAs into receivership. She flipped through my binder. You document like a paralegal. If even half this holds, you've got selective enforcement, conflict of interest, and potential mail fraud if they used certified letters under false pretenses. She capped her pen, looking up. You want scorched earth or reform? Reform, I said. I just want fairness and peace. She nodded. Then we build leverage quietly. No lawsuits yet. Let them hang themselves on process. Second engagement moment hit naturally then, like an old radio jingle I knew by heart. If you've ever been bullied by an HOA, tell me how you handled it, I said into my small camera later that evening. If you haven't, you'd be surprised how many are watching these videos just to see who'll stand up. Leave your message for them right here. Over the next week, retaliation escalated. Citation number 5. Grass length exceeding 3.5 inches. Citation number 6. Exterior lighting visible from street beyond permitted lumens. Citation number 7. Unapproved security camera orientation. Each fine came with a 5-day payment window. I photographed, logged, dated. Sam joked, "They're giving you more paperwork than my divorce." The harassment didn't scare me yet. It annoyed me. But when my son Caleb came home from college that weekend, it shifted. He parked his old Honda by the barn, stepped out and said, "Dad, some guy in a reflective vest was snapping pictures of the house this morning." His tone was steady, but his eyes flickered the way June's used to when she hid worry. That night, I sat on the porch with a whiskey and the smell of cedar. The wind rattled the screen door. I realized I was less afraid of fines than of letting my son see me bully. Yet that's the wound, right there. The same helplessness I felt at the hospital 3 years ago, holding June's hand as monitors flatlined. I wasn't going to feel it again. Next morning, I filed 2 formal complaints. One with the Texas Department of Housing and Community Affairs, one with Travis County Compliance Division. They oversee registered HOAs. Both required attachments, deeds, photos, and notarized statements. I sent it all certified mail, return receipt. On Thursday, I watched from my truck as HOA volunteers placed new "No Trespassing" private park signs along the fence line. They posted one directly over my old well access gate. The irony burned. That gate, under the 1979 easement, was legally mine. I opened my glove box, retrieved the certified deed copy, and smiled. The leverage was maturing like good stock. By Friday, Karen emailed all homeowners. Unauthorized access to the park area will result in legal action. The subject line read, "Community Security Update." I printed it, added to the binder. Then something curious happened. A letter from the county attorney's office arrived, not addressed to me, but to Prairie Hollow HOA Board. The clerk, maybe by accident or fate, had CC'd my attorney. It stated, Pending review of recorded easement 1979-03 and associated rights-of-way. All enforcement actions regarding said parcels are suspended until verification. That was the first domino tilting. Alicia called me that night. They'll panic. Don't engage. We'll give them rope. So I stayed quiet. I fixed my fence, helped Sam patch his shed roof, and waited. Every day, another resident waved a little longer when they drove by. Rumors spread that the HOA might lose its insurance coverage. Still, I didn't gloat. I just counted the days. Knowledge nugget number 3. When a regulatory body suspends enforcement pending investigation, any HOA actions taken during that window can be deemed void ab initio, legally as if they never existed. 10 days passed before Karen resurfaced. Email subject line: urgent. Special meeting on community AC site. ES rights. The body said, attendance mandatory for members adjacent to the south easement. That meant me. Sam slapped my shoulder. They're calling you to the gallows, Jack. Good, I said. They built the scaffold. I'm bringing the blueprint. Debate starter time. Perfectly organic as I looked into camera again that evening. Where do you think the line should be between safety and harassment? Should an HOA have the right to patrol or film your property? Or is that the point where community crosses into control? The wind outside kicked up dust as I packed my binder and fresh copies of every certified page. 17 days since the fines began. Exactly what I'd predicted. When I arrived at the clubhouse that night, the parking lot overflowed. Pickup trucks, sedans, even a couple of sheriff units. News spreads fast in small towns, especially when egos are involved. I adjusted my tie, same one from the last meeting, and walked up the steps. Inside, Karen stood behind the podium, her orange blazer crisp under fluorescent light. Mr. Mercer, she began, microphone echoing, we've determined your activities compromise the integrity of our community spaces. Therefore, the board— Hold on, I said, placing the red binder on the table with a soft thud. Before you proceed, I need the record to reflect the presence of a county representative. Every head turned toward the door as a man in a navy jacket entered. Inspector Robert Klein, County Compliance Division. Badge visible, clipboard in hand. Karen's smile froze mid-sentence. He stepped inside like a storm front in slow motion. Quiet, sure, the kind of presence that changes barometric pressure in a room. His clipboard bore the county seal and a packet of documents with fluorescent tabs. Evening, he said, calm as someone ordering pie. I'm here under Directive 2416 to review active HOA enforcement actions concerning the southern easement. Karen's throat bobbed. We weren't informed. That's because it's an unannounced observation, Klein said, flipping a page. We received multiple homeowner complaints and a property rights claim under easement 1979-03. I raised a hand slightly. That'd be me. He nodded once, professional courtesy. Mr. Mercer, your documentation checks out on record. County will temporarily enjoin HOA enforcement over the disputed parcel until final determination, effective immediately. You could hear a pin drop. Even Doug, the enforcer, stopped clicking his pen. Karen tried to rally. This is private property. Klein turned a page. According to these maps, the easement remains active and reverts to the adjacent owner after 26 consecutive years of non-use. That's you, Mr. Mercer. You may maintain and permit access for emergency and community use. The HOA lacks jurisdiction until we close review. The audience murmured, neighbors shifting, whispering. Someone in the back whispered, he beat him by paperwork. Karen's eyes darted. You think you can just walk in and take over? I met her stare. No, I'm taking back what was never yours. Klein initialed the top page, tore off a yellow copy, and handed it to me. The paper was warm from the carbon press. Keep this. It's your temporary authority. He looked at Karen. Ma'am, the board is advised to suspend enforcement or risk county penalty. You're welcome to appeal, but until then, stand down. He signed, dated, and the room tilted. That's the first reversal. Locked and sealed. My secret leverage surfacing under full daylight. Visual beat number 1. The inspector's pen clicking as the stamped form hit the table, echoing like a gavel. Karen folded her arms, whispering to the board attorney. They huddled, panicked whispers, thick as bees. I turned towards Sam, who sat near the aisle, grinning behind his coffee thermos. I walked outside, paper in hand, the evening air cooling down over the asphalt. The sky was streaked gold. From behind, Klein said, "You handled that clean. You were ready." "I used to design public infrastructure," I said. "You learn where boundaries really are." He smirked. "Good, because they'll push back." He was right. 2 days later, HOA social media pages lit up with posts. Mercer attempting hostile takeover of community property, fake documents, threats to residents. Each accusation time-stamped within minutes of the last meeting. I saved screenshots, printed them, filed under defamation evidence. Then the calls started, one neighbor whispering they'd been told not to talk to me. Another said her dues check was lost after she asked about the easement. The board was in full damage control, and they were sloppy. Alicia, my attorney, kept her tone measured. "We can't sue them all, but we can box them in. Keep collecting data. They'll slip again." Meanwhile, the community started shifting. An elderly couple, the Wilks, waved as I passed. They'd kept to themselves for years. "We heard what you did," Mrs. Wilks said. "It's about time someone stood up." I nodded. "It's not over yet." That night, Caleb helped me scan everything, his fingers tapping on the keyboard, mine flipping through folders. "You're like Batman with paperwork," he joked. "Batman's got better lighting," I said. But the truth is, I felt lighter. 3 nights later, Karen's SUV idled outside my property gate. I saw headlights sweep across the pasture. I stepped out onto the porch, camera in hand, and filmed from 30 feet away. No trespass, just presence. After 2 minutes, she backed out. Knowledge nugget number 4, harassment by pattern, multiple uninvited appearances, surveillance or communications can qualify under Texas Penal Code 542.07 if intended to alarm or torment. Documentation of dates, times, and behavior is key to establishing pattern evidence. I logged the video, noted timestamp 22:18. Next morning, I emailed the footage to Alicia and Klein. By noon, she replied, "Keep it, do not publish. County may pursue administrative action if pattern continues." Karen must have sensed walls closing in. That afternoon, she sent out a board-wide memo. Emergency dues increase proposed, 15%, to fund legal defense against rogue property claims. I didn't even have to lift a finger. Neighbors did the rest. Within hours, replies filled the community thread. What legal defense? Why a 15% increase without a vote? Where's the transparency? By dusk, the HOA meeting room overflowed again. I sat near the back, binder ready, watching chaos bloom. Residents shouted for receipts, minutes, budgets. Karen's lipstick smudged as she tried to hold control. Doug pounded the table, shouting, "Order!" I leaned forward, speaking just loud enough. "You could end this by opening your books." Karen snapped, "You don't tell us what to do." A woman I'd never met stood up. "Actually, the bylaws say he can. Section 9A, any member can request inspection of financial records with 5 days' notice." Applause rippled. Doug glared. "You all are falling for a stunt." Sam laughed. "Only stunt here's how you misread your own rulebook." Karen slammed her gavel. "Meeting adjourned." The crowd booed, chairs scraping. Klein, again present by quiet invitation, stepped forward. "Ma'am, failure to conduct open financial disclosure when requested can result in state review." She turned crimson. "This isn't your jurisdiction." He held up the badge again. "It is now." I could feel the momentum shifting like wind before rain. The HOA had crossed from arrogance into panic, and panic writes its own ending. Later that night, I recorded a quiet update for viewers. If you're firmly anti-HOA or even just tired of selective enforcement, share one tactic that worked for you, or at least like the video so it reaches someone who needs it. Because sometimes one clause, one overlooked document, is enough to turn the tide. I ended the clip looking straight into the camera, eyeing softly. Tomorrow, the dominoes start falling. And they did. At 8:15 the next morning, I received a call from Klein. "Jack, county's opening an audit on Prairie Hollow. They found irregularities in financial submissions for fiscal years 2021 through 2023. You might want to attend the next public session. They'll need witnesses." I exhaled, slow. "That means subpoena power?" Exactly, he said, and discovery cuts both ways. I looked toward the field where the plane had crashed. Grass regrown, fence repaired, the smell of soil clean again. June would have smiled to see it. For the first time since she was gone, I felt like maybe I was keeping that promise to protect what we built. The sound of crickets filled the evening air. My phone buzzed again, this time a message from an unknown number. "You'll regret this." I smiled faintly, saved the message, and added it to the evidence log, entry number 34. The audit meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday 9 o'clock a.m. at the county annex, a beige building that smelled like old toner and floor wax. I wore my best pressed shirt, the one June had given me years ago, and tucked the red binder under my arm like a shield. Sam tagged along, leaning on his cane, joking that he wanted front row seats for the fireworks. The room was half fluorescent hum, half nervous whispers. At the front sat County Auditor Maria Lopez, silver hair in a bun, glasses sliding down her nose. On one side of the table, Karen, Doug, and the HOA attorney. On the other, me, Alicia, and a quiet row of neighbors. Klein stood by the wall, arms folded. Lopez started briskly. "This review concerns HOA Prairie Hollow's financial compliance, disclosure of related party contracts, and adherence to open meeting laws." She adjusted her mic. "We have verified that a landscaping contract worth $18,400 was awarded to Donovan Groundskeeping, LLC, owned by the board president's cousin, without recorded board vote." Karen interjected, voice brittle. "It was an emergency maintenance project." Lopez looked up slowly. "Invoices labeled beautification of gazebo area do not constitute emergency repair." The silence cracked. I could feel Doug's jaw tightening. Alicia passed me a note under the table. Let her talk herself deeper. Karen's attorney spoke next, trying to sound composed. Even if the process was imperfect, no harm resulted to the association. Lopez turned a page. "Actually, the HOA's insurer disagrees. They've filed a notice of potential coverage denial pending verification of fraud exposure. That would shift liability directly to the board members." The air changed temperature. Doug muttered, "You can't do this." Lopez didn't blink. "We can, and we are." I leaned forward just enough. "Ms. Lopez, could I enter an exhibit for the record?" She nodded. I opened the red binder, flipped to tab 4, Easement Rights and Enforcement Suspension. The paper edges were worn from my handling. This shows the HOA pursued fines and a lien under a clause voided by their own exemption and further suspended by county directive. I request that the record reflect unlawful enforcement attempt during pending regulatory review. Karen's attorney tried to object, but Lopez waved him off. Accepted. Exhibit 12F. Visual beat number 2, the binder snapping shut with a metallic click that echoed across the room. Karen's voice shook now. "You're ruining this community." I kept my tone even. "No, ma'am, I'm rebuilding it." The meeting adjourned after 2 hours. Outside, the late morning sun was blinding. Sam whistled low. "You just watched a queen lose her crown." I wasn't celebrating yet. HOA boards survive scandals by inertia, not grace. It was time to push them into accountability. That afternoon, Alicia filed an open records request for every HOA email, notice, and financial report from the last 3 fiscal years. Legally, they had 10 business days to respond. I set up timer on my phone. Debate starter, fresh from that moment, came naturally as I recorded an update later that evening. How far should an HOA control what you do on your own property? Your porch lights, your paint, even your kindness? Where's the line between policy and privacy? Let me know below. The replies flooded in overnight. Stories of mailbox citations, tree height arguments, even one man fined for hanging a flag too low. It wasn't just me. I was speaking for a choir that hadn't realized it could sing together. 3 days later, I got an envelope hand-delivered by courier. Inside, a cease and desist letter from the HOA attorney, accusing me of defamation for disseminating unverified claims. Alicia read it twice, then smiled. "They're panicking. This is performative. We'll counter with a notice of preservation, forces them to hold all documents intact for discovery." By now, half the neighborhood had switched sides. People dropped off coffee, shared copies of their own fines, built a quiet coalition. One neighbor, Evelyn Brooks, retired accountant, found something none of us had noticed. The HOA had been overcharging dues by $27 per household per month for the past 18 months. The surplus was parked in an unreported account. She brought spreadsheets, rows of numbers, dates, checks. We printed it all, hole-punched, added to the growing archive. Knowledge nugget number 5. In most states, HOA assessments must match the approved annual budget. Any unallocated surplus must be refunded or applied to future dues with notice. Hidden accounts can constitute embezzlement or fraud under state corporate codes. Evelyn shook her head. They've been sitting on almost 60 grand, Jack. $60,000. We didn't need more proof. We needed an audience. So I called the local station, Channel 14 News, investigative reporter Maya Jennings. I didn't leak documents, just facts. County audit pending, HOA noncompliance, residents requesting reform. She bit instantly. When the news crew showed up, Karen lost composure entirely. She marched across the lawn, waving papers, shouting, "You can't film here!" The camera kept rolling. Her voice cracked on the word trespassing. That clip hit social media within hours. 3,000 views by evening, 20,000 by morning. Comment sections turned savage. Karen meltdown compilation trended locally. By Monday, Klein called again. "You'll like this. County just issued a compliance hearing date. HOA board must appear under oath next Thursday." "Good," I said. "I'll be there." But that week, retaliation found one last gear. Someone spray-painted traitor across my fence in red. I found it at dawn, paint still dripping. Caleb helped me scrub it off, jaw tight with anger. "You gonna call the cops?" "I already did." The deputy arrived, took photos, filed a vandalism report. Entry number 41 in my log. That night, a black SUV idled at the end of the road again. Headlights off this time. I stayed on the porch, holding my phone camera steady, recording for 3 minutes. No confrontation, just evidence. Inside, Alicia's voice came through the speakerphone. "They're escalating because they're cornered. Hold firm. Thursday's your reckoning." I looked out over the dark pasture where the crash site once burned. The memory of smoke mixed with the faint smell of solvent from the cleaned fence. Maybe some stains never truly fade, but you can paint over them with truth. When the compliance hearing opened that Thursday, the room was packed with cameras, county officials, and nearly the whole neighborhood. Klein nodded at me from the back row. Karen sat rigid, orange blazer slightly wrinkled now, as if the fabric itself had lost confidence. The county attorney, Mr. Harlan, opened. "Board members, do you understand you are under oath?" Karen's yes came out as a whisper. "Do you acknowledge failure to disclose related party transactions and improper enforcement?" Her silence said enough. Doug tried to cut in. "We acted in good faith," but Harlan slammed his pen down. "Good faith doesn't override statute." I stood quietly until my name was called as witness. Walking to the microphone, I caught sight of Caleb in the back, recording on his phone. My voice stayed level. All I wanted was fair treatment. Instead, I got threats, fines, and trespass. This community deserves transparency, not tyranny. Applause broke protocol, but no one stopped it. Karen's head dropped into her hands. The gavel struck once. Meeting adjourned for deliberation. When we stepped outside, rain had begun, light and cool, washing dust from the pavement. Sam nudged me. "You think they'll finally fold?" I nodded. One way or another. Debate starters slipped naturally as I faced the camera later that night under my porch light's flicker. If a board officer lies or hides money, what punishment fits? Removal, restitution, or criminal charges? Tell me in the comments. And if you've lived through something like this, your story might help someone else fight back. The next morning, the county released its decision. The county's letter arrived by certified mail at 10:12 a.m. The envelope was thick, the kind they use when something official's about to shift the ground beneath you. I slid it open with my pocket knife on the porch rail, coffee steaming beside me. The header read, "Administrative Decision, Prairie Hollow HOA Compliance Case, 24-1-1187. The first line made my chest loosen. Board found in violation of state disclosure statutes, conflict of interest provisions, and selective enforcement protocols. Karen Donovan, censured, fined $7,500 personally, and temporarily suspended from board duties. Doug, issued a warning and ordered to attend compliance training. HOA, required to refund all overcharged. Dues within 60 days. I exhaled so long it felt like dust leaving my lungs. Sam whooped from his truck when he saw my grin. "That paper there looks like freedom, Jack." "It's the start of it," I said, folding the letter carefully into the binder. But the story wasn't done. Victories like this always come with backlash. That evening, HOA's official page posted a statement calling me a disruptive influence undermining community harmony. I didn't respond. Alicia told me silence would sting more than words. Still, seeing my name twisted like that triggered something old. June's accident had been twisted too. Driver claimed she darted out even though skid marks told the truth. I'd learned that sometimes justice takes patience, not noise. That patience would be tested again, fast. Within 48 hours, the HOA treasurer, Martha Lewis, resigned publicly and handed me a flash drive outside the post office. "You didn't get this from me," she whispered, "but people deserve to know." Then she walked away like smoke. Back home, Caleb and I opened the drive. Inside, email chains, spreadsheets, scanned receipts. One folder labeled Deferred Maintenance Fund. Inside that, transfers totaling $59,643.72 to the same Cousins LLC, each marked consulting. Alicia's voice over speakerphone was crisp. "That's embezzlement territory. We'll forward to the county DA, but let's play this smart. Give them one last chance to reform voluntarily." I liked that plan. Mercy before hammer. We drafted a letter, short and clean. Proposal for community reform and restoration. It laid out terms, transparent budgeting, annual independent audits, term limits, and open voting. In exchange, I'd agree not to push for criminal referral if they complied within 30 days. I dropped it at the HOA Dropbox just before dusk. The sky was streaked with pink clouds. Crickets had already started their nightly argument. Then came the retaliation montage, every petty move they had. Left. Citation number 8. Improper mailbox dimensions. Citation number 9. Unapproved color variation in window trim. Citation number 10. Unauthorized overnight vehicle. 3 in 1 week. I logged them all. The paper stack grew taller than the coffee can where I kept June's old paintbrushes. One night around midnight, a thump woke me. Metal against glass. I grabbed the flashlight, found my truck mirror smashed clean off. Another vandalism report, entry number 49. Caleb wanted to install floodlights. I said yes. The fear crept in quietly, though. Lying awake, I'd picture those headlights on the road, hear the crunch of gravel under tires. I'd get up, walk the hallway, touch the photo of June on the wall. "I'm still here," I'd whisper. By day, I buried that fear in process, printing, filing, building an archive that could choke a filing cabinet. Every page was armor. Midweek, Klein called. "Jack, I thought you'd want to know. The county DA's reviewing new documents from an anonymous source. They match your easement maps exactly. Looks like someone inside flipped." "Martha," I said quietly. "Can't confirm," he replied, but his pause told me enough. The HOA's facade was cracking. News crews started calling again. Maya from Channel 14 asked for a follow-up interview. I agreed, on one condition. It had to end with hope, not just outrage. We filmed at the edge of the old crash site, now green again with spring grass. She asked what kept me going. I looked straight into the lens. Because a home isn't just property, it's promise, and promises deserve protection. The clip aired that night. Views doubled the next morning, comments filled with support. Veterans, single parents, retired teachers all thanking someone for standing up. For once, the algorithm felt like it was working for the good guys. But the board didn't stay quiet. Karen hired a new attorney, a tall man named Grayson Pike, all tailored suit and empty confidence. He sent Alicia a letter claiming my reform proposal was extortionate in nature. Alicia laughed out loud. "Classic overreach. We'll flip it. Their refusal proves bad faith." That same day, a county inspector revisited the subdivision to verify restitution steps. Klein came along again, clipboard in hand, his steady presence like the hum of justice. He measured park boundaries, cross-referenced parcel maps, and signed an order reinstating public access to the path along my fence, the one they'd tried to wall off. Visual beat number 3 formed itself, rain-beaded microphone on a makeshift podium as Klein announced the reopening of the easement to a small crowd. The neighbors clapped, cameras clicked. That night, I stood there alone, running my fingers along the cool metal of the reopened gate. Caleb came up behind me. "You think this is it, Dad?" "Not yet," I said. "One more move left." Debate starter for the audience rolled naturally from that moment. If a community leader breaks trust but the residents still need structure, would you rebuild the same HOA or dissolve it completely? Drop your take below. I'm curious how you'd reset it. Inside, under the yellow porch light, I reviewed our timeline. The 30-day clock on the reform proposal was half gone. If they refused, the DA would move, and so would I. The next morning, my inbox pinged, an HOA-wide email signed not by Karen, but Doug. Subject line, Community Update, New Leadership Transition Plan. My heart kicked once. I opened it. The board acknowledges errors in prior management and is entering discussions with residents on implementing a transparency and reform charter. Alicia called within seconds. They blinked. "Then let's make it binding," I said. That was reversal number 2 in Motio, on the trade of leverage for structural reform. But we weren't celebrating yet. The deal had to be signed in public, on record, in front of the same neighbors who'd endured months of fear and fines. The meeting was set for Friday evening at the clubhouse, same place where it all started. Rain was in the forecast. Fitting, I thought. Every story worth remembering ends in cleansing weather. Friday came in gray layers of drizzle, the kind that hangs low over the plains like it's waiting for a decision, too. I left early, binder under my arm, one clean shirt pressed, June's silver locket in my pocket. Caleb drove, headlights carving through mist. Neither of us talked much. You could feel the air holding its breath. By the time we reached the clubhouse, the parking lot was a mosaic of wet asphalt and umbrellas. Half the neighborhood had shown up, farmers, teachers, retirees in raincoats. A local reporter's camera light flickered like a heartbeat against the damp siding. Inside, folding chairs filled the hall. The microphone at the podium blinked red, its cord snaking across the floor toward a small PA system. Doug sat at the head table, Karen 2 seats down, eyes red, hair flat from the humidity. Grayson, the new attorney, whispered to her, gesturing sharply. I took a seat near the front with Alicia and Sam. Klein leaned against the wall again, silent sentinel. Lopez, the county auditor, was also there, flipping through a slim binder. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. The entire apparatus that had once ignored homeowners was now watching the HOA under a microscope. Doug cleared his throat. We're here to discuss potential reforms and community restoration measures. He glanced my way. Mr. Mercer, I believe you initiated this process. I stood, keeping my voice even. I did, but it's not about me. It's about all of us being able to live without fear of a fine for helping our neighbors. A quiet murmur of approval rolled through the room. Alicia passed me the draft reform document, 7 pages, bullet-pointed and clean. I read each clause aloud so everyone could hear. Term limits. No board member may serve more than 2 consecutive 2-year terms. Transparency. Quarterly publication of all budgets, invoices, and contracts on a public web portal. Independent audit. Annual third-party financial review with resident oversight. Fee rollback. Refund or credit of the 27-month overcharges to all residents within 60 days. Ethics Committee. 3 resident members, none previously on the board, empowered to review complaints. Open records. All HOA meetings recorded and archived for member access within 10 days. Community Charter. Declaration of equal access and respect among residents. No selective enforcement. When I finished, the sound of rain on the roof filled the silence. Karen finally stood. Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. I admit mistakes were made, but this will destroy everything we built. I looked at her, not with anger but something quieter. Then let's build it better. For a moment she looked like she might argue, then just sat down. Klein stepped forward, producing a thin folder. County recognizes these as valid reform measures under statute. Signatures tonight will make them binding under community association law. Doug shifted, eyes darting around the room. We'll need legal review. Grayson, perhaps realizing the optics, whispered fiercely, "Sign it, or the DA proceeds Monday." Doug exhaled hard, took the pen and signed. One by one, each board member followed. When the pen reached Karen, her hand trembled slightly. She looked up at me. "Is this what you wanted, Jack? To humiliate me?" I shook my head. "No. I wanted fairness. You can start fresh too if you mean it." She hesitated, then signed, ink smudged slightly under her thumb. Klein nodded to Lopp, as who stamped the document with a crisp thunk, county seal, date, and registration number. The crowd exhaled as if a collective weight had lifted. That was the official reversal number 2, the reform deal, sealed and public. Outside, thunder rolled far off, soft as applause. Visual beat number 4 unfolded naturally right then. The rain-beaded microphone, red light still glowing, catching drops like tiny sparks as I stepped forward again. I leaned into it and spoke not just for the camera, but for every person who'd been fined, shamed, or silenced by people misusing power. This isn't about tearing down a board. It's about remembering that a community's rules should serve its people, not the other way around. Transparency isn't rebellion, it's respect. Applause grew, hesitant at first, then rising until even Karen clapped once, almost unconsciously. Alicia touched my arm. "You did it." I smiled. "No, we did." As people filed out, Klein shook my hand. "For what it's worth, this case will be in training manuals next year." "Then maybe it'll save someone else the paperwork," I said. Later that evening, Caleb and I stood by the newly reopened path, rain dripping from the brim of my hat. The streetlights shimmered on puddles. He said quietly, "Mom would have liked this ending." "Yeah," I said, voice rough. She believed in fixing things, not burning them. Debate Starter found its rhythm there. When you catch corruption in your community, do you expose it publicly or work quietly to reform it from within? Both roads are hard. What would you choose? We walked home through the rain, the reform charter folded in my pocket, the ink already starting to blur at the edges. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house sounded like closure, wood settling, systems adjusting to a new balance. I sat at the kitchen table, drafting a letter to the neighbors for the HOA newsletter. "Dear friends," it began, "this isn't a victory story. It's a maintenance report for the human spirit. We fixed a leak before it flooded everything." I stared at it for a long moment, rain pattering against the window. Sam must have organized that vote. He'd always said the path needed a better name. I walked out there after dark, lantern in hand, gravel crunching beneath my boots. The new sign hung at the gate, June's Way, Esther 2025. I traced the letters with my thumb, cold metal under warm rain. The floodlight shimmered across the field where the plane had once burned, now just a ripple of green grass and night air. A voice behind me. "Caleb, you gonna tell the story online?" "Yeah," I said softly. "But not for me. For anyone still thinking they can't win against a system built to wear them down." He nodded, shoved his hands in his pockets. "Mom'd be proud." The wind shifted, carrying the smell of cedar and wet soil. I closed my eyes and just listened. The next day, I sent copies of the Reform Charter to the Texas Community Oversight Commission and filed the last entry in my log. Case closed. Community restored. Debate Starter blended in naturally near the close. If you had the power to write one rule every HOA must follow, what would it be? Transparency, empathy, or limits on power? Drop it in the comments. As evening fell, I sat at the porch table, flipping through the binder one last time. The papers smelled faintly of rain and toner, strange comfort in bureaucracy done right. I poured a small glass of whiskey, clinked it gently against the wood. "For you, June," I whispered. Lightning flared far off over the horizon, silent, distant, like punctuation to a sentence finally complete. But before I turned off the light, my phone pinged, a new message from an unfamiliar HOA 3 counties over. "We've been watching your story. Can you help us start a reform charter?" I smiled. Looks like the next case just found me. The message came from Silver Ridge Estates, a place I barely knew, except for a highway sign-in. I'd need a grocery store bulletin board. Their HOA president had resigned after a scandal. The residents wanted a clean start. I stared at their email, subject line simple. "We saw what you did in Prairie Hollow." I could have ignored it. After all, I wasn't a lawyer, not a consultant, just a man who'd gotten tired of being quiet. But something about it pulled at me. Maybe because June used to say, "When you fix one fence, the neighbors start asking about theirs." That next weekend, Caleb and I loaded the truck with copies of our reform charter, a portable scanner, and my old field camera. The drive east took 2 hours, open road unfurling like a new chapter. Along the way, we passed a stretch of prairie where the clouds were so low it looked like the sky was brushing the earth. Silver Ridge's clubhouse was smaller, humbler, cedar siding, flagpole out front, and a cracked parking lot that told me their problems weren't about power, just neglect. Inside, a dozen residents sat in folding chairs, hopeful and tired. I told them what I'd learned. Document everything. Demand transparency, not vengeance. The law's not your enemy if you respect its process. An older man raised his hand. "Didn't you ever think of just moving?" "Every day," I said. "But home isn't geography, it's accountability. If you run from injustice, it just finds your new address." They nodded. A few clapped quietly. It wasn't a speech, really, more like a passing of tools. Back in Prairie Hollow, things had settled. The first community picnic in years took place that spring. Kids with frisbees, barbecue smoke drifting over freshly painted fences. No one worried about citations. They just lived. The HOA sign now had a smaller plate beneath it. Governed by residents, for residents. In the morning, I'd deliver it. But first, there would be one final ripple, one last domino still waiting to fall. Something none of us saw coming. It came the next Monday morning, just when the air smelled like new beginnings, wet asphalt, mowed grass, coffee from the thermos on my porch rail. My phone buzzed, an email alert from the Texas Community Oversight Commission. Subject line, Prairie Hollow, HOA. Insurance, action filed. Inside, a single paragraph. Following your county's determination and signed reform charter, the HOA's liability insurer has opened a claims review and suspended coverage for prior board actions pending investigation. Affected officers may be subject to reimbursement demands. In plain language, it meant the same people who'd terrorized half the subdivision might have to pay their own legal bills. By noon, the news had broken locally. Channel 14 ran the headline, "Prairie Hollow HOA under state scrutiny after reform deal." The clip cut between the signature ceremony and a soundbite from me. Transparency is contagious once it starts. Karen didn't take it well. She called an emergency board session, technically still her right as a suspended officer, though meaningless now. I went anyway, out of principle. The meeting room was half empty, the other half curious residents watching her try to reclaim ground that no longer existed. She slammed a folder onto the table. "You've ruined me, Jack. 20 years of community service." I kept my tone low, steady. "You ruined yourself when you forgot what service meant." Her lawyer wasn't there this time. Neither was Doug. Only silence, the hum of the fluorescent lights, and that faint smell of mildew from ceiling tiles soaked by the weekend rain. She looked down at her hands, voice trembling. I just wanted the place to look perfect. Something softened in me then. Perfection's a lonely goal. Fairness is a better one. She didn't reply, just gathered her papers and walked out into the drizzle. That was the last time I saw her. By Wednesday, the Reform Committee met for the first time under the new charter. Evelyn, our retired accountant, was elected chair by unanimous vote. Sam brought donuts, joking he wanted an audit exemption for pastry donations. For the first time in a long time, people laughed in that room instead of whispering. Maya from Channel 14 filmed a quick follow-up segment. She asked, "What's next for you, Jack?" "Maintenance," I said. "Good governance needs the same care as a fence. You fix what's weak before it collapses." She smiled. That's quotable. The footage of that handshake became the thumbnail for her video. Sunlight breaking through clouds over the clubhouse roof, my old hat dripping with rain. Over the next week, the domino collapse accelerated. The Cousins LLC withdrew its business license. The HOA's insurer confirmed restitution proceedings. The county attorney announced a small but symbolic fine for selective enforcement violations. Neighbors began repairing fences together, repainting mailboxes to match, not out of fear, but pride. For once, community standards meant unity, not control. Debate prompt rolled naturally that night as I filmed the next episode. When leaders lose integrity, should they ever be allowed to return to power after reform? Or is trust a one-time currency? Let me know your stance below. I ended the video with a quiet shot of the new Ethics Committee plaque being mounted beside the clubhouse door. Simple bronze letters, rain-specked, reflecting porch light. Then came the letter that tied it all together. County Notice of Final Compliance. The first line read, "All prior enforcement actions void. Easement rights confirmed. Reform charter registered and enforceable." The second line carried the detail that made my throat tighten. Community access path renamed June's Way at resident request. Evelyn kept the books transparent. Sam's jokes had become legend. People teased that his coffee thermos deserved its own plaque. Even Doug, stripped of titles, volunteered to fix benches. Karen moved out quietly. Word was she joined a church in the next county, started helping at their food pantry. Maybe she found her own version of redemption. The news cycle faded, but the lesson didn't. Maya's final segment aired 1 month later, short, simple, no dramatic music. Just her voice saying, "One man used the law to rebuild trust, and a community followed." It played over footage of me closing that red binder for the last time. Then came the pre-ending moment I wanted to say aloud, recorded under the golden light of my porch. If you believe I fought the right way, and that this is how it should end, say a few words in the comments for your friend, your neighbor, whoever's stuck fighting something unfair. Subscribe so you'll catch the next story before it starts. And if you care about your community, share this, not for me, but for everyone who still thinks one voice doesn't matter. I paused before clicking stop. The cicadas had just started singing. The light turned that particular Texas amber that makes every dust mote glow. Afterward, I walked to June's Way again. The gravel had settled, weeds trimmed, a new wooden bench installed halfway down the path. On it sat a small brass plate, dedicated to those who keep the peace by knowing the rules. I sat there a while, thinking about how something that started with a single citation had turned into a movement of reform, how fear, when documented and measured, can become evidence, how anger, when disciplined, can become progress. A week later, I got a manila envelope from the county. Inside, 3 photographs, the signed reform charter framed in the courthouse lobby, the first community audit report stamped compliant. The new HOA board's group photo, smiling in front of the clubhouse, rain clouds breaking overhead. The note paper clipped to them read, "You asked for fairness. You got reform. Congratulations, Mr. Mercer." I placed the photos in the back of my binder, then walked out to the barn. The air smelled like hay and motor oil. Caleb was tightening a latch on the old gate. "You done with that binder yet?" he asked. "Almost," I said. "Just need one last entry." I opened to the final page, wrote slowly in black ink. Postscript. June's Way stands open. Community reformed. Case resolved. Moral. Never let rules outlive reason. The pen scratched softly, like closure signing itself. Outside, thunder rumbled again, but gentle, far away, more promise than threat. I leaned against the doorway, watching the sky split into blue patches. What changed after? Karen's fine paid for a community scholarship, first recipient, a local kid studying urban planning. The HOA's insurer issued new ethics guidelines statewide. The county launched a transparency task force nicknamed the Mercer Standard. And me? I kept my word to June's parents. Land debt-free, gate open, water clean. Some nights when I sit on the porch and the wind runs through the trees just right, I can almost hear her laugh mixing with the rustle of leaves. It reminds me that justice isn't a storm. It's a steady rain that makes things grow. I pick up my camera, angle it toward the fading sun, and hit record one last time. "All right, folks," I say softly, "let's see where the next case takes us."